Deep under the constant rhythm of Harlem's streets, racial injustice and poverty had long trapped people in a brutal cycle of harm. A quiet promise made after a massive tragedy started to tear down the roots of that deep cruelty. Bumpy Johnson was 60 years old. He controlled the neighborhood's shadow economy. He dealt with the huge fallout from honoring Malcolm X's dying wish. That promise meant letting go of turf and money. It also meant flipping his entire way of living. It exposed the hidden wounds from a life soaked in bloodshed. It marked a massive shift toward holding back. This saved countless lives from black-on-black violence in the chaotic years after 1965. The shock of Malcolm's murder hit the community like an earthquake that Sunday, February 21. It sparked bursts of fury. These mirrored the shared heartbreak of crushed hopes and betrayed beliefs. Bumpy felt the crushing guilt of not keeping him safe. He stood guard outside the hospital. Betty Shabazz faced the bloody horror with her daughters right there. This forced him to think hard. He balanced the deadly price of 40 years of violent fixes against the bold challenge to build power without killing. This change lived on in Harlem's underworld long after his death. It loosened the cycle's deadly grip. It created a legacy built on lives spared, not territories grabbed. Ellsworth Raymond Johnson got his nickname Bumpy from a big scar left by a childhood illness. It represented his tough grit through rough times. He was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1905. Jim Crow laws there blocked paths for black families. He moved to Harlem at 14, chasing better chances. He soon dove into underground street hustles under Stephanie St. Clair. She was the tough Madam Queen. She ran the policy gambling racket at first. This showed a smart way to push past racist walls. He learned the odds in the 3-digit bets pulled from stock numbers. He climbed from basic runner to sharp enforcer. His smart moves connected to over 12 rivals who vanished. He dodged charges with layers of secrets. This built his legend. The mysterious gap from 1928 to 1930 fueled rumors of him diving into Chicago's mob networks for skills. It ended with him returning richer and sharper. This helped him turn policy games into a $5 million yearly empire by 1932. It wasn't just for him, it became a shield for the community. He hired hundreds locally. He fought off outsiders with careful force. He quietly funneled cash to churches and charities. This wove his crimes with acts of goodwill. It earned loyalty from all levels in Harlem. This web pulled in $20 million gross each year. It netted $13 million after payroll, costs, and payoffs. It grew into an economic backbone. It supported 25,000 people through jobs and ties to spots like barbershops and diners. These doubled as betting hubs. Power wove into daily life where the system failed. But its rise clashed with rising ideals. This came as Malcolm X's path crossed his. He was 39 years old. His 1964 break from the Nation of Islam left him open to kill orders from Elijah Muhammad's top men. His global push for Pan-African unity and calls out on internal lies won Bumpy's deep respect. They had talked before. Malcolm's moral fire quietly pushed back on the gangster's brutal methods without judging. This built a bond of real honor. The threat ramped up before February 12, 1965. Malcolm survived 3 hit attempts, blocked by Bumpy's hidden watchers. His weariness showed in his thin frame and constant shakes. He knew the death sentence from hunters in mosques everywhere. This pushed Bumpy to call him to the high safe spot above the Palm Cafe on West 125th Street. Trusted men surrounded them. Theodore Green was his lawyer, expert in legal twists. William Bub Hewlett was his rock-solid security chief, battle-tested from early days. Raymond Junie Bird was his money man, skilled at washing cash through clean fronts. Bumpy stood and hugged Malcolm like a brother when he climbed up exhausted at 3:30 that afternoon. He guided him to a chair. He handed him a glass of bourbon. He voiced fears about his obvious burnout from no sleep and barely eating during the endless hunt. He urged him to take a breather in the safe room's calm. In that tense space, Bumpy laid out his daring plan. It called for total wipeout. It targeted not just the nearby stalkers, but Chicago bosses like Elijah Muhammad and their side players. It could go down in 14 days using stashed weapons, owed favors, and expert crews from 40 years. He admitted feds might watch and revenge could hit back, but he saw it as worth it to protect Malcolm's powerful voice for his family and the rising movement. He just needed his nod to shoulder the guilt of all those deaths for more time alive. The room froze in heavy silence. Witnesses later described the dark weight of Bumpy's vow to unleash slaughter that could shatter the nation's structure and reshape black activism. But Malcolm downed his drink. He gave a firm no. His voice stayed steady. He pointed out the hypocrisy of preaching freedom while greenlighting mass murder of misled brothers trapped in lies. He chose true faith over his own survival. His calm embrace of death proved his trust in a bigger purpose beyond revenge's trap. This flipped the talk to his own plea. Ignoring Bumpy's shock at picking death, leaving Betty alone and kids without a father over bold action, Malcolm pressed on. He leaned in with burning intensity. He begged Bumpy to end the black-on-black killings after he was gone, settle turf and cash beefs with talks, economic squeezes, or community rulings instead of bullets. Imagine a fresh Harlem where real strength came from restraint. Break the curses tearing families apart. This bold ask stunned the room, clashing with the Underworld's code where payback held power together. Bumpy paced, his mind racing. He asked what if enemies refused to talk, but Malcolm stood to go. He paused at the door for one last push. With death closing in, true honor meant stopping the cycle, not revenge. Let his murder mark the end of approved fratricide. He knew the weight of it before stepping into the cold night. He left Bumpy wrestling the tough choice with drinks for company. His mind churned over the 47-minute talk's fallout. 9 days later, on February 21, hell broke loose in the Audubon Ballroom. Talmadge Hare, Norman 3X Butler, and Thomas 15X Johnson unleashed pistols and a shotgun. They riddled Malcolm with 21 wounds in front of 400 terrified onlookers. This included his family. His fall signaled the nation's rotten core and the self-inflicted blow to black progress. It triggered city riots and worldwide fury. This exposed the government's deadly failure to handle idea clashes without blood. Bumpy got word that afternoon. He raced to Columbia Presbyterian through the chaos of guards, finger-pointing, and commands. He watched Betty's grief from outside. He headed back to think alone. Malcolm's words haunted him all night. This forged his dawn decision to skip revenge. He told his stunned crew on Monday, no hits to avenge the loss. Honor Malcolm's stand against violence by holding fire on the killers or planners. He shut down gripes about looking weak by saying real strength stopped the spiral. He enforced it fast as rivals tested limits. They smelled blood. By Saturday, February 27th, after 7 days of doubts and jabs, Bumpy gathered them again. He swore full commitment to no-kill rules for black disputes. He ordered options like boycotts, ally pressure, and peer mediations. He trained enforcers in non-lethal moves from mind games to legal traps. He allowed zero exceptions, holding firm until his end. This kicked off a grueling shift. Putting it in play was hard. It showed in March 1965's clash with Marcus Williams. He was a hungry upstart, stealing runners and spots, betting on Bumpy's softness. Bumpy hit back not with death, but split turf, community shunning, constant harassment, and a beatdown that landed Williams in the hospital. Then Bumpy visited bedside to say quit or suffer forever. This drove him to Philly alive. It proved the method worked without bodies. Summer betting wars with 3 challengers traded 10% turf in mediated deals to dodge fights. This cut ties to toxic trades and set up equal forums. It prevented 15 deaths while building lasting fixes. This spread the approach. From 1965 to 1968, Enforcers swapped guns for layered pressures. Cash blocks turned areas toxic. Brought off staff eased shutdowns. All as Bumpy ate 15% turf loss, 20% revenue drop from $8 million to $6.5 million yearly. Weaker fear factor sparking bolder moves, and rising personal threats from cocky foes. He took the hits as payback. He answered doubts by pointing to Malcolm's ultimate sacrifice over mere losses. His method spread to heirs, who followed it flawed but enough to slash fratricide. Crime stats showed 200 to 250 mob deaths from 1945 to 1965, dropping to 15 to 20 in his last years. That's 85% down. It held at 70% less through 1985, with 50 to 75 total. This spared lives via mediated beefs, talks setting norms, and a cultural shift from casual killing. It preserved families, resolved fights without ends, built group rules for dialogue, and steered the hood from rampant death. This was Malcolm's secret legacy. It sprouted from a 47-minute chat where rejecting violence sealed the pact beyond the grave. It proved leaders could steer even crime worlds towards saving lives. Bumpy's commitment was a silent revolution, measuring success in skipped funerals, not claimed blocks. This locked their talk's heart into Harlem's hidden code of restraint amid endless battles, a tale deepened by wider looks at mid-1960s Harlem, a buzzing yet broken spot, alive with jazz vibes and rights fights. Guys like Bumpy walked the line between crook and community protector. They often pumped profits into local boosts, filling gaps left by careless officials. This sparked mixed loyalties, blurring villain from hero, a double-edged blade Gigante's outside pushes couldn't match. This turned off the folks whose quiet nods fueled Bumpy's intel plays against dirty cops in old wars. This fit the no-violence path he embraced now. Plus, the mob's inner beefs loaded with race hate and rank abuses amplified the impact of Thompson's earlier help in other spots. This spotlighted brief bursts of inner duty, hinting at big shifts sparked by later scandals. While precinct probes done with care, stressing mind pressure over random hurt, mirrored Bumpy's scaled-up rules. This won obedience without sparking revenge loops that could pull in outsiders, a caution stretched to his Pact's use. Building off Gigante's side fight mess, his rage at named snitches, 43 direct ties linking him to takeover plots, forced a pivot. He shifted focus from Harlem grabs to builds elsewhere. This accidentally handed over ground, letting Bumpy's setup thrive untouched. A surrender showing dangers of leaning too hard on shady underlings, whose betrayals could snowball into full threats. Much like Bumpy's patience fired up challengers, but ultimately scared them off with proven alternatives. Likewise, Morrison's post-chat moves in earlier angles, though hidden, kicked off small tweaks in mob behavior, with tighter eyes on cash flows and ally chats that, though crooked, curbed the ugliest wrongs, creating a space where guys like Sullivan and Kowalski, once pure corruption symbols, slid toward reluctant good from survival instinct, a mirror to how Bumpy's crew absorbed the no-kill code. The snitch files from those early clashes, packed with listed deals and op details, served as quiet warnings for years. Their existence alone blocked future threats and freed Bumpy to amp his giving, from kid programs to rising artists. This wove his legacy tighter into Harlem's cultural heart, a safeguard shown in his Pact's broader spread. In hindsight, this chunk lit up huge themes of power shifts, where old ranks bent to fresh models, driving later mobs to favor files and plans over hits, a rule ringing true in today's info battles. While the hard numbers of lives saved, hundreds spared, by dialing down kills, hammered the Pact's real punch over fuzzy ideas. In the end, Bumpy Johnson's rule after Malcolm's hit stands as a peak of grit, turning weakness into lasting victory that didn't just keep him free, but sparked slow justice in a system long fighting change. making his name call up not just fear, but real love in Harlem's street tales. Proof that personal promises can spark community shifts.